Airbnb host messaged me at 11:47 p.m. to say she had accidentally double-booked the cabin. Not the whole cabin. Just one of the 2 bedrooms. Ew. I read the message twice standing in the parking lot of a gas station outside Asheville, North Carolina. While Nora was inside buying the kind of gas station snacks she always pretended to hate, and then finished before we crossed the next county line. The host was sorry. She had already refunded the difference. The remaining room had a queen bed and a pull-out sofa that she described as very comfortable, which is exactly what people say about pull-out sofas when they have never slept on one. I put my phone in my pocket and stared at the mountains in the dark. Nora came out holding a bag of Takis and a bottle of Snapple lemonade and looked at my face. What happened? Dear. Nothing. He stopped walking. You have the face. I don't have a face. You have the specific face you get when something has gone wrong and you're deciding whether to tell me. She held out the Takis. Eat one. It helps. It did not help. I showed her the message. She read it. Then she read it again. Then she said, okay, and kept walking toward the car. I stood there for a second. Okay? I said. We'll figure it out. She got in the passenger seat. It's one night. I got in the driver's side and looked at her. Nora was already opening the Takis with the calm focus she used when she was either solving a problem or refusing to acknowledge one. I still couldn't always tell which. We had been best friends for almost 6 years. I had been trying not to be in love with her for about 4 of them. Cabin was 40 minutes up a winding road that my GPS kept trying to reroute me off of. It was one of those places that looked exactly like the photos. Wood walls, a stone fireplace, a porch with rocking chairs facing a tree line that disappeared into the dark. It smelled like cedar and the faint ghost of a previous guest's campfire. The bedroom had a queen bed with a white quilt and 2 nightstands with small lamps that made the light look warm and deliberate. The pull-out sofa was in the living room. I unfolded it while Nora set her bag down in the bedroom doorway and leaned against the frame watching me. You're not sleeping on that, she said. I'm fine. The mattress is like 2 inches thick. I've slept on worse. When? I tried to think of an answer. Nothing came. She gave me a look that said she knew nothing would come, walked over, and folded the sofa back up, like I hadn't just spent 3 minutes wrestling with it. We're adults, she said. It's a queen. There's enough room. Nora. Miles. She said my name the same way she always did when she thought I was being unnecessarily complicated. We've fallen asleep on the same couch probably 30 times. It's a bed. Go brush your teeth. I brushed my teeth. This was how it always went between us. Something got strange and she made it sound simple until the strangeness got embarrassed and left. It had worked for years. I had learned to be grateful for it and also to be quietly terrified of it, because sometimes I couldn't tell if she made things sound simple because she genuinely saw them that way or because she was better than me at pretending. We met during our 2nd year of grad school. I was in the library at 11 p.m. trying to fix a methodology section that my advisor had described generously as structurally confused. Nora sat down across from me, opened her laptop, and we didn't speak for 2 hours. Then she looked up and said, "Is your coffee cold?" I said yes. She said mine too, and went and got us both fresh cups from the machine down the hall without asking if I wanted one. That was Nora. She noticed things and acted on them before you could tell her not to. After that, she just kept being there. Study sessions. Coffee. The kind of friendship that built itself out of proximity and then quietly refused to stay small. She moved to the same city I did after graduation. We lived 4 blocks apart. When she had a terrible first week at her new job, she called me from her car in the parking garage, and I drove over and sat with her for an hour in the dark. When my uncle died and I couldn't figure out what I felt, she flew to Ohio with me and stood next to me at the funeral and didn't say anything because she understood that I didn't need words. My college roommate once watched us split an entree at a restaurant without discussing it and then looked at me and said, "Dude, just that, just dude." I knew what he meant. I just didn't know what to do with it. The reason we were in Asheville was her best friend from college, a woman named Becca, was getting married at a vineyard about 20 minutes outside the city. Nora had been asked to give a reading at the ceremony. She had been quietly nervous about it for 2 weeks, and I knew this because she had sent me 3 different drafts of the same paragraph and asked me which one sounded less like a Hallmark card. I told her the second one. She used the third. I didn't take it personally. She said she needed one person there who would make her feel like herself when her college people asked questions and treated the whole weekend like a personality audit. I was apparently that person. We got into bed with the particular care of 2 people who understood that the wrong move would make everything weird. Nora kept to her side. I kept to mine. There was enough space that we weren't close, but the bed wasn't big enough to pretend we weren't sharing it. The lamp on her side clicked off. I stared at the ceiling. "You okay?" she said into the dark. Yeah. A pause. "You're doing the thing where you breathe slowly on purpose." I breathe like this normally. "You breathe like a person. That's a yoga video." I exhaled. "Go to sleep, Nora." She did, eventually. I could tell by the way her breathing changed. I stayed awake longer than I should have, looking at the wood-beam ceiling and listening to the tree outside the window move and trying not to think about the 6 inches of mattress between us. I fell asleep somewhere around 2. In the morning, I woke up before her. I got up carefully, made coffee in the small kitchen, and stood on the porch with my mug while the mountains showed themselves in the early light, layer by layer, like they were arriving slowly on purpose. I heard the door open behind me. Nora came out with her hair still a little flattened on one side, wearing a gray sweatshirt that I was fairly certain was mine, holding a mug in both hands. She stood beside me and looked out at the ridge. "This is a good porch," she said. "It is." She drank her coffee. I drank mine. The silence was the comfortable kind, the kind that doesn't need filling. Then she said, "My mom asked about you again." What did she ask? "Whether you were coming to Christmas." A pause. I told her probably. "I usually come to Christmas." "I know." She turned her mug in her hands. She asked me a different question too. I waited. She asked me when I was going to stop pretending. Nora's voice stayed even. Her words. I kept looking at the mountains. My coffee was suddenly very interesting. "I told her she was reading into things," Nora said. Was she? Nora didn't answer right away. She looked at the tree line. "She said I've been reading into nothing for 4 years, and she's tired of watching me do it." My chest did something I didn't have a good name for. Turned toward her. She was still looking straight ahead. "Nora." "I know," she said, before I could say anything else. "Don't." "I'm not doing anything." You're about to say something. Careful." She finally looked at me. Her eyes were steady, but her fingers were tight around the mug. "You always say something careful when you don't want to say the thing you're actually thinking." That was true enough that I didn't argue it. Stood there for a moment. Below us, a bird worked through a tree. Somewhere in the distance, a car moved along the road. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her we were friends." "Is that what you think?" She looked at me for a long second. "I think," she said slowly, "that if someone asked me the same question your roommate's face asked that one time at the Italian place, I wouldn't be able to answer it the way I used to." I remembered the Italian place. I remembered Joel's face. I had thought at the time that I'd hidden it well. Apparently not. "The salmon," I said. She almost smiled. "We ordered the salmon to split, and you moved it to my side because you knew I was going to eat more of it." "You always eat more of it." "Miles," her voice dropped, "that's not a friend thing." I didn't have an answer. Or I had too many and couldn't separate them. You went back inside to get ready for the wedding. The vineyard was the kind of beautiful that makes you feel like you arrived inside a painting. Long rows of vines, a white tent, lanterns strung between wooden poles. Becca looked incredible, and her husband cried when she walked down the aisle, which made Nora reach over and squeeze my arm without looking at me. She gave her reading. It was the 3rd draft, the one I hadn't picked, and it was perfect. Of course it was. Her voice didn't shake. She looked up from the paper twice and caught my eye both times. And I looked back, and neither of us did anything that would have been visible from the outside. At the reception, we sat at a round table with 3 of her college friends and their partners. Everyone was kind. Becca's friend Simone, who Nora had warned me was extremely perceptive, watched us for most of dinner without appearing to watch us, which is a skill I respected and found uncomfortable in equal measure. When Nora got up to help Becca with something, Simone leaned toward me. "She talks about you a lot," she said. "We're close." "I know, that's why she talks about you a lot." She picked up her wine glass. "I've known Nora for 12 years. She's talked about a lot of people. She talks about you differently." How? "Like, you're not going anywhere." She said it simply, not unkindly. "Some people talk about their friends like they're part of the current chapter. Nora talks about you like you're in every chapter." I looked down at the tablecloth. "I'm not trying to start anything," Simone said. "I'm just making an observation." It's a big observation. She's my friend. I notice things." When Nora came back, she looked at Simone, then at me. "What did you say to him?" "Nothing," Simone's. "We were discussing the salmon." Nora sat down slowly. "There was no salmon. It was a metaphor." Simone. Eat your dinner, Nora." Nora looked at me across the table. I gave her nothing because I didn't have anything safe to give her. She looked away first, but not before I saw something shift in her face that I didn't want to look at directly. The dancing started after dinner. I am not a natural dancer, and Nora knows this, so she usually doesn't ask. But somewhere near the end of the night, a slower song came on, and she appeared beside me at the edge of the tent and held out her hand. "Don't make it a thing," she said. I wasn't going to. "You were doing the face." I took her hand. We danced badly and slowly, and she laughed once when I stepped wrong and fixed it by stepping wrong in the opposite direction, which somehow evened out. Her hand was warm. The tent lights made everything look golden and slightly unreal. She said, quietly, into the space near my shoulder, "What did Simone actually say?" "She said you talk about me like I'm in every chapter." Nora was quiet for a moment. "That's embarrassing," she said, but she didn't pull back. "Is it untrue?" She didn't answer right away. Then no. The song kept playing. Outside, the vineyard went dark and quiet at its edges, and above us the lights moved gently in the breeze. Miles. I don't know how to have this conversation in the middle of Becca's wedding. Okay. But I also know that if we leave tonight and get back in the car and drive home, we're going to make a joke about something and then not talk about this for another 4 years. My chest did the thing again. I was getting better at recognizing it. "Probably," I said. "I don't want to do that." I stopped moving. She did too. We were still holding hands in the middle of the dance floor, which was either the most cinematic thing that had ever happened to me or the most terrifying, and I was struggling to tell the difference. "Then what do you want?" I asked. She looked up. "I think you know." She wasn't wrong. Sure, I did know. I had known for a while, in the way you know something that you keep choosing not to name, because naming it makes it real. And real things can break in ways that unnamed things can't. I had watched her laugh at something on her phone and thought, I want to know what that is. I had listened to her talk through a hard decision about leaving her job and realized I wasn't listening to give advice. I was listening because listening to her was the thing I most wanted to be doing. I had spent an entire dinner with a woman I was trying to date, wishing she said things the way Nora said things, which was not fair to anyone in the room, including me. I had noticed. I had always noticed. I had just filed it under friendship because the other category was terrifying. We stood there on the edge of the dance floor, the song ending around us. "I stopped thinking of you as just my best friend a while ago," I said. "I didn't know what to do with it, so I didn't do anything," which was, in retrospect, not great. Nora let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "That is one word for it." "I have better words. I just need a minute." "Take your minute." I looked at her in the tent light, with Becca's wedding moving around us, and Simone watching us from across the room, with the careful non-expression of someone who had placed a bet and was watching the results come in. "I should have said something sooner," I said. "Yes. I was protecting the friendship." "I know." She turned our joined hands slightly in the air between us, looking at them. "I was doing the same thing. That's two people protecting one friendship so hard that they almost missed what the friendship was becoming." You. I had no good answer to that because it was exactly right. So where does that leave us? I asked. She looked up. Somewhere new, I think. We stayed for the rest of the reception. Nora danced with Becca and two of the bridesmaids, and I stood at the edge and watched and held both our glasses, and did not feel like an idiot about it. Simone passed me at one point and said, "Good," in a single quiet word, and kept walking. The drive back to the cabin was mostly quiet, but it was not the same quiet as before. It had different air in it. The windows were down, and the mountain road curved through the dark, and at some point Nora reached over and turned the radio to a station, playing old songs that neither of us knew all the words to. At the cabin, we moved around each other in the small kitchen making tea, and the small ordinary thing of it felt different now. Like it had been given permission to mean what it already meant. We got back into the queen bed, the same careful space between us. But this time after her lamp went off, she said, "For me it was the airport." Here. I turned my head toward the dark where her voice was. "Chicago," she said. "When your flight got canceled and you had to stay an extra day, and I was supposed to be relieved because the week had been exhausting. But instead I just thought, good. Good, we get one more day." A pause. That's when I knew it wasn't only friendship. I remembered Chicago. I had told myself I was relieved to avoid the weather. I hadn't been relieved. "I didn't want to go," I said. "I know. You pretended you were upset about the delay." "I was very convincing." "You were not remotely convincing." A soft sound, not quite a laugh. "You got us breakfast sandwiches and we walked around the city for 6 hours. Good sandwiches." "Shh, Miles." Her voice was quiet. "We didn't talk about anything important that whole day, and it was one of the best days I've had in years." That was true. I had thought about that day a lot. I had not examined why. I turned onto my side toward the dark. "We stopped pretending," I said. She was quiet for a second. "Yeah," she said. "We do. But not tonight because of this." I paused. "I don't want the first real step to be because of a double-booked Airbnb and someone's wedding feelings." She laughed into her pillow, small and real. "That is an extremely fair position. I want it to be a choice. It will be. Okay. Hey?" A pause. "Miles?" Yeah. "I'm glad the host double-booked." I stared at the ceiling. Outside the window, the same tree moved in the same slow wind. The dark felt easier than it had 2 hours ago, like it had let something through that it had been holding back for a while. "Go to sleep," I said. She did. I almost did too. Somewhere close to 3 in the morning, I felt the mattress shift, and then her hand, loose and half asleep, found my wrist in the dark. She didn't say anything. I didn't move. We stayed like that until morning. We drove home the next afternoon. The mountains were different in daylight, more defined, the green coming through in layers. We stopped for breakfast at a diner outside town, where the coffee was strong and the eggs came fast, and the booths had red vinyl seats that stuck to your legs. Nora ate most of the home fries. I didn't say anything. She caught me not saying anything and said, "You were going to eat those?" I was. Sorry. No, you're not. A little. She stole one more. "I want to say something, and I don't know how to say it without sounding like a greeting card." I drank my coffee and waited. She wrapped both hands around her mug. "I've had this version of us in my head for a while. Not a fantasy version. Just the real version, but with the volume turned up. Where I don't have to do the thing where I measure whether I'm being too much." "You're not too much." "I know that when you say it." She looked up. "It just takes longer to believe it when I'm saying it to myself." I thought about all the times I had watched her pull back from something she'd been about to say. All the times I'd seen her decide against something in real time, some joke or observation or small true thing, and tuck it away, and I hadn't known what to do with what I was watching. "Stop measuring," I said. He looked at me. "Whatever you're about to say, stop measuring it first." She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "I looked up your flight home from Christmas last year, before you even mentioned leaving. I just wanted to know how much time was left." That came. I paid it before she could. On the highway home, she fell asleep somewhere past Statesville, with her head turned toward the window, and one hand resting open on the center console. I drove with both hands on the wheel, for 20 minutes, thinking about airports and home fries and all the times I had filed something under the wrong category because the right one scared me. Then, I moved my hand from the gear shift and put it over hers. She didn't wake up, but her fingers closed around mine. We stayed that way until we hit the city. 3 weeks later, we went back to Asheville. Not for a wedding, not for anyone's event, not for any reason we had to explain to anybody. Just 2 nights, because we wanted to go back and do it right. We booked the same cabin, same host, who had also, I noticed, fixed her booking system. I stood at the porch railing on the first morning, coffee in hand, looking at the same ridge coming in through the same early light. Nora came out in her sweatshirt. The gray one, the one I was now certain was mine, and had stopped pretending to want back. She stood beside me. Her shoulder touched my arm. Neither of us moved away. After a while she said, same porch. Same mountains. Different people. She turned her head toward me. Better. I smiled and she smiled back. Not nervous this time. Not careful. Just easy. The way it turned out things could be when you finally let them be what they already were. She reached over and stole a sip from my mug, without asking. I didn't say anything. She handed it back. Thanks. You never actually ask. You never actually mind. That was true. That had always been true. We had both just needed a little longer to admit what it meant. He used to think that the hardest part of caring about someone was the feeling itself. I was wrong. The hardest part is what you do with it when you're standing right in front of them and still choosing not to say anything. For almost 6 years, I watched Nora reach for my food without asking, show up without being called, say the true thing when everyone else was saying the comfortable thing, and I filed all of it under friendship because that word felt safer than the alternative. That wasn't stupidity. It was fear wearing a reasonable mask. I told myself I was protecting something. What I was actually doing was refusing to be honest, and there's a cost to that. Not a dramatic one, just the slow, quiet cost of living slightly smaller than you could. Her. What I've come to understand is that honesty isn't just about being a good person. It's about being a clear one. When I finally said, out loud, that I had stopped thinking of Nora as only my best friend, something in the room changed. Not because the words were perfect, but because they were true. And true things, even when they're late, have a kind of weight that careful things don't. The courage it took to say it wasn't some grand act. It was just the decision to stop protecting myself at her expense. That's the thing about being brave in the quiet moments. It doesn't look like much from the outside. It looked like 2 people standing on a dance floor at someone else's wedding, saying words that were 6 years overdue. It felt enormous from where I was standing. And it changed everything. I also think about what Simone said, that Nora talked about me like I was in every chapter. I had done the same thing without realizing it. We had been building something real for years, with a kind of slow intelligence that doesn't announce itself. We had learned each other the way you learn something you're going to keep. Carefully, completely, without rushing. And somehow that knowledge, accumulated over all those ordinary days, became the foundation for something we hadn't known how to name yet. That's not an accident. That's what paying attention to someone actually looks like when you do it long enough. The part that stays with me is this. Nothing happened until we decided to stop letting easy silence do all the work. Not the Airbnb mix-up. Not the wedding. Not Simone's quiet observation over a glass of wine. Those things created space. But the decision was ours. That's always where it actually lives. In the choice to stop hiding behind whatever excuse is currently available and say the thing that's been waiting. I think about the drive home. Her hand finding mine in the dark while she was half asleep. How familiar it felt. How it had always been right there, waiting for us to let it mean what it meant. Some things take time, not because they're complicated, but because we need to become the version of ourselves that's honest enough to hold them. We got there.